I thought being a doctor meant treating strangers, not ghosts from my past. But when my estranged father, Gregory Brooks, walked into my exam room as a patient, everything cracked open. Hearing his voice after 30 years hit me like a punch. I excused myself and sobbed in the bathroom. Now, he's alone in hospice, facing the life he chose over me, and I'm his doctor. When I was 7, I waited hours in the coffee shop, holding a comic book he said he'd sign. Gregory never showed. I remember the waitress glancing over with pity every time the door opened. My mom said, "Don't expect too much from him." That night, I cried into my pillow, swearing I'd never give him another chance, but part of me still stared at that empty seat every time I walked by. At 16, I found a photo in Mom's drawer, Gregory smiling with a woman and 2 kids. A new family. My stomach twisted. I confronted her, and she just said, "He moved on." I hated how calm she sounded. I spent nights Googling him, each photo adding fire to the resentment. I wasn't forgotten, I was replaced. That truth became a scar I carried into med school, into marriage, into every quiet moment that reminded me I wasn't enough. Each morning after Gregory's admission, I lingered outside his door. I couldn't step in. Instead, I read his vitals and left instructions for nurses. Charlotte urged me to talk to him, but I froze. Seeing his name on the chart made my throat tighten. I told myself I was being professional, but I knew better. Avoidance wasn't medicine. It was fear of him, of the words I'd buried too deep to say aloud. Gregory asked the nurse if I was avoiding him. When she told me, I snapped at her without meaning to. That night, I slammed a cabinet shut, startling Charlotte. "He wants a relationship now," I shouted. Where was he when I needed one? I could see her pain too. She had lost her father young. "Maybe he's trying," she whispered. Her words echoed in the silence that followed. I didn't have an answer, just years of silence. A colleague invited me to a father-son charity run. I declined instantly, stomach tightening. I hadn't run with a father, or played catch, or heard a proud "that's my son." At the event, I watched a boy hug his dad at the finish line. I ducked away, heart pounding. That night, I stood outside Gregory's room again. My hand hovered over the handle, but the weight of 30 years made it too heavy to push open. Charlotte left a letter on my desk. "Maybe you're the only one who can decide what healing looks like," she wrote. It wasn't about Gregory anymore, it was about me. Could I forgive? Not for him, for myself. I walked to the staff room, looked in the mirror, and asked aloud, what would I need to hear? My voice trembled, but I knew something real, not excuses, something that matched the ache I had carried alone. The next morning, I stepped into Gregory's room. He looked older than I remembered, frailer, smaller. He smiled weakly. "You look just like your mom." I didn't reply, just stared. I checked his chart, pretending it was any other patient, but my hands shook. "Why are you here now?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away, just sighed. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was screaming everything we'd never said. I returned the next day, closing the door behind me. "I need you to tell me the truth," I said. Gregory looked startled, then nodded slowly. "I left because I was broken. Addicted. I thought I'd ruin you too." I clenched my fists. "You did anyways." My voice cracked. He looked away, ashamed. "I wanted to be better first." I shook my head. "You had years. This wasn't healing, it was rupture, and it had just begun." I couldn't finish the whole story in this short. The full story is on my channel and linked below.